Okay, number 16. Perform the operation, which here is subtraction. So to get subtraction, you need a common denominator. So we're going to factor x squared minus 16, and that's x plus 4, x minus 4. And since the second fraction has an x minus 4, we need to multiply it by x plus 4. So the denominators will be the same. Plus 4. And we get 3x plus 4 over x plus 4, x minus 4, minus, distribute the 2, so we get 2x plus 8 over x plus 4, x minus 4. And we're going to subtract, so 3x minus 2x. Sometimes I like to make it plus and then change the sign so I don't forget. A lot of people forgot to distribute that on the quiz. So we get 3x minus 2x is x. 4 plus negative 8 gives us negative 4. So x plus 4 over x plus 4, x minus 4. We can simplify by dividing out the x minus 4's. And our final answer is 1 over x plus 4. Number 17, same general idea. The denominator is x minus 5x plus 5. So we're going to multiply by x minus 5 in the second fraction, the top and the bottom. So we get a common denominator, 3x minus 5 over x plus 5, x minus 5, minus 2x minus 10 over x plus 5, x minus 5. And we're subtracting again, so change it to, well, that becomes plus. That way we don't forget. We get the incorrect sign if we forget. So we get x plus 5, because negative 5 plus 10, over x plus 5, x minus 5. Divide out the x and plus 5's, and our final answer is 1 over x minus 5. And number 18 has us adding and subtracting. X squared minus 9 is x plus 3x minus 3. So we're going to multiply the second fraction by x minus 3, because that's what its denominator is missing. And we'll multiply the third fraction by x plus 3, because that's what its denominator is missing. We get 4x over x plus 3, x minus 3, plus 2x minus 6, don't forget to distribute, over x plus 3, x minus 3, minus 2x plus 6 over x plus 3, x minus 3. That's subtraction, so we're going to distribute that negative so we don't forget. And we get 4x plus 2x minus 2x is going to give us 4x. And we get positive plus negative 6 minus 6, so that's minus 12 over x plus 3, x minus 3. I can factor out the 4. 4 times x minus 3. And then I can divide out the x minus 3. So my final answer is, let me make some space, 4 over x plus 3. Okay, when we have complex fractions, fractions above a fraction, we're going to simplify the top, we'll simplify the bottom, and then we'll divide the answers. So I have 2x and 3x as my denominator. I'm going to multiply this one by 2 over 2, and this one by 3. That'll give me 6x in both denominators. 3 over 6x plus 6 over 6x gives us 9 over 6x. That's our numerator. We're going to then, in the denominator, our common denominator is going to be 2. So we're going to multiply by 2 on top and bottom. I get 8 over 2x minus 1 over 2x is 7 over 2x. Now we're going to divide these two fractions, so we'll multiply by the reciprocal of the blue fraction, which was on the bottom, which is 2x over 7. And then I can divide out my x, and 2 goes into 6 3 times, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and I'm left with 3 sevenths as my final answer. Going to do the same thing on number 20. We're going to multiply the top, this fraction by 3, so I can make my denominator 3x. So I get 12 over 3x minus 3 over 3x, which is 9 over 3x. Let's reduce that some more, which is 3 over x, because 3 goes into 9 3 times. And this one will multiply by 3, just like the other problem. Oh, this one by 2. So I get 4 over 6x minus 3 over 6x. Gives me 1 over 6x, and then we'll divide the two fractions by multiplying by the reciprocal, 6x over 1, and the x's divide out, and 6 times 3 is 18. Number 21, another complex fraction, but there's no adding here, so we're just going to factor and then multiply by the reciprocal. So x squared minus 14x plus 49 is x minus 7. Here's my eraser. Minus 7, x minus 7 over 15x. And the reciprocal of the denominator is 3x over x minus 7. My x's divide out. 3 goes into 15 5 times. I can divide one of the x minus 7's. All that's left is x minus 7 over 5. 22, same thing. Factor and then multiply by the reciprocal. So we get x minus 4 times x minus 4 over negative 8x times negative 2x over x minus 4. That's the reciprocal of the denominator. Divide out the x's, divide out an x minus 4, and negative 2 goes into negative 8 positive 4 times. Well, x minus 4 over 4 is our final answer. And number 23. I'm going to have to do some adding in that denominator. Remember, if it's a whole number, the denominator is 1. So we'll multiply by x over x. So we get 1 over x minus 3x over x, which is 1 minus 3x divided by x. Then we 2 over x plus 3 times the reciprocal of what we just did, x over 1 minus 3x. And we're going to multiply, so we get 2x. And it looks like we're going to need to figure out what the denominator should be, so let's multiply this out. X times 1 is x. X times negative 3x minus 3x squared. 3 times 1 is 3. And 3 times negative 3 is negative 9x. So when I combine like terms, I get negative 3x squared minus 8x plus 3, which makes the answer C. Okay, the difference between these problems now is, again, the word solve and the equal sign, which means we're not going to get a common denominator and add the fractions together. We want to do Fraction Buster by multiplying everything by the LCM, which in this case is going to be d minus 1 times d minus 3. So we're going to multiply the first one by d minus 1 times d minus 3. Minus 3 over d minus 3 times d minus 1 times d minus 3 equals 0 times d minus 1 d minus 3, which on this case is just 0 on this side. And we get d minus 1's cancel, so 2d minus 6. Make sure we distribute. And then the d minus 3's cancel. Negative 3, I'm going to distribute a negative 3. Negative 3d plus 3 equals 0. So negative d minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to add d. So d equals 3. Number 25, same thing. In this case, your LCM is d plus 4, d plus 1. I'm going to multiply everything by the entire common denominator so that I get rid of the fraction. So this is 25. D over d plus 4 times d plus 4d minus, or d plus 1, plus d over d plus 1 times the whole thing, d plus 4, d plus 1, equals 1 times d plus 4, d plus 1. Let's move it up. So the d plus 4's divide out, this d plus 1 divides out. And I get d squared plus d, that's d times d plus 1, plus d squared plus 4d equals d squared plus 5d plus 4. You have to FOIL that out. So we have 2d plus 5d on this side, 2d squared, equals d squared plus 5d plus 4. We're going to get everything on one side, so we're going to minus 4, minus 5d, and minus d squared. And I end up with d squared minus 4 equals 0. Remember that when we're solving a squared problem, it should give us two answers. So this factors to d plus 4, d minus 4, sorry, d plus 2, d minus 2, d plus 2, d minus 2, and when I solve that I get d equals plus or minus 2. And then you got to go back and check for extraneous. In all of these, we got x equals 3, and, oh, wait, let's go back and look at that. In this problem here, we got that d equals 3, and what happens, oh, d equals negative 3. I forgot to write the negative. And if I plug in a negative 3 up here, it doesn't make it extraneous, but if it was a positive 3, it would have been. And then here my answer, extraneous, would be a negative 4 or a negative 1. And I got plus or minus 2, so that means there's no extraneous answers on that one. And we're going to solve 26 the same exact way. So I'm going to write it down. Actually, I'll just delete some of this off. Okay, so number 26, we're going to multiply by x minus 1, x minus 9. The x minus 1's cancel. We have x squared minus 9x. That was x times x minus 9. Plus the x minus 9's cancel, and we get x squared minus x. And x minus 1 times x minus 9 is x squared minus 10x plus 9. And we get, let's see, 2x squared minus 10x equals the x squared minus 10x plus 9. Minus the x squared, add the 10x. We get x squared minus the 9, factors to x minus 3, x plus 3, which gives me x equals 3 and negative 3. Those are not extraneous, so your answer is B. Number 27, my LCD is going to be 30x. So we're going to multiply each of the fractions by 30x. It's an equation again. And then we're going to divide out anything we can. So that becomes x squared, x times x. The 5x cancels and I get 6. So minus 6. The 6 cancels the 30 and I get 5x. So I get x squared minus 6 equals 5x. I'm going to subtract 5x. X squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. What two numbers multiply to negative 6 and add to negative 5? We have x minus 6 and x plus 1 equals 0. So x is 6 and negative 1, which both work because 0 would be extraneous. Number 28, 30x is my common denominator. So we get 2 goes into 30 15 times. So that gives me 15x times x, so 15x squared. 15 goes into 30 twice, that gives me plus 2x. And the 30x cancels and gives me 1. So 15x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals 0. And then we can factor that. Let's try 5x and 3x. And if I want a positive 2, I think I'm going to make this positive 1 and that a negative 1. Let's see, we get 5x minus 3x, which gives me a positive 2. So then I set those equal to 0. 5x minus 1 equals 0, so x is 1/5, and 3x plus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative 1/3. So 1/5 and 1/3. And number 29. This is a proportion. A proportion is where we have a fraction equal to a fraction. So these are the ones where we can just cross multiply. 1 over r squared minus 1 equals 2 over r squared plus r minus 2. And when we cross multiply, we get r squared plus r minus 2 equals 2 times r squared minus 1. R squared plus r minus 2 equals 2r squared minus 2. And then I like my r squareds to be positive. So I'm going to move the r squared. And I'll move the r and the 2 all to the other side. So minus 2r minus r plus 2. And we get, let's see, 0 equals r squared minus r, which is r times r minus 1. And so r equals 0 and r equals 1. And if we look back at our original problem, if we plug in a 1, that's extraneous right here. A 1 will make this 0. So 1's extraneous. And I plug in 0, it doesn't make them 0. So my answer is r equals 0. All right, here we have the last problem. We have a complex fraction equal to negative 2. The way I see it is if I multiply the other side by the denominator, I can make this look a little bit easier for me. So I get x plus 1 over 4 minus 1/2 equals negative 2 times 1/8 plus x minus 2 over 4. And on this side, I'm going to multiply by 2 to get a common denominator of 4. And I get x plus 1 over 4 minus 2 over 4, which gives me x minus 1 over 4. And then on this side, I can divide the 2 into the 8, makes that a 4, and makes this a 2. And both of them are going to become negative because I'm multiplying through by a negative. So on this side, I get negative 1/4 plus negative x plus 2 over 2. I'll multiply this by 2, right? That negative had to distribute to make the denominator a 4. So negative 1/4 plus negative 2x plus 4 over 4. And so this x minus 1 over 4 equals negative 2x plus 3 over 4. And I can cross multiply because now I have a proportion. Even though they both have a denominator of 4, I get 4 times x minus 1 equals 4 times negative 2x plus 3. So 4x minus 4 equals negative 8x plus 12. And add 8x and add 4. So those cancel. I get 12x equals 16. And x equals, that reduces by 4 to 4/3. And that doesn't make any of the denominators 0 because none of the denominators have fractions in it, and it's not going to make the bottom fraction 0 either. So we're good.